I'm Kimberly Evans, 32 years old. Last night, my sister cornered me in our family kitchen back in the Atlanta suburbs, her eyes narrowing like she'd been holding this in for years. "You're not coming to my wedding," she said, that smirk twisting her lips as she leaned in close. "It's better without it." My phone was already buzzing in my hand, invites flying out to aunts, uncles, cousins, even distant relatives I'd barely spoken to in a decade. Everyone except me. Her $800,000 extravaganza in Miami, the one she'd bragged about for months, with celebrity chefs and flown-in florals, was off-limits because my freelance writing gigs had started pulling in real attention. Articles in local mags, a viral piece on family secrets that got shared across the South suddenly. I was the one people noticed, and that burned her. I froze, the words hitting like a gut punch. But I didn't beg. Instead, I walked out, drove straight back to my Midtown apartment, and fired up my laptop. Hours blurred into the dawn as I poured it all out, a raw, unfiltered story about growing up in her shadow, the little digs, the favoritism that twisted our family inside out. I hit publish on my blog just before sunrise. No edits, no second thoughts. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally saying my truth out loud. But when she turned on her phone that morning, scrolling through the chaos of her bridal prep, my story was already viral. Shares exploding, comments flooding in, strangers calling out the jealousy like it was their own fight. She thought she'd silenced me for her big day. Wrong. What happened next tore her perfect plans apart and left our family scrambling. If you've ever been iced out by the one person who should have your back, you know this fire stick around, because the fallout hits harder than you think. Before we jump in, if family jealousy stories like this fire you up, smash that like button and subscribe for more raw payback tales that hit home. Where are you watching from? And what's the time there? Let's see how this truth spreads. That smirk lingered in my mind as I drove home to Midtown Atlanta. The memories came rushing back, sharp and unfiltered. From our childhood in the suburbs where everything started. I was about 10, scribbling my first short stories in a notebook hidden under my bed, dreaming of sharing them with the world. One day, I left it out on the kitchen table, excited to show Mom and Dad. But when I came back, the pages were torn out, scattered like trash. My sister Tracy Evans stood there, her hands smeared with ink, claiming she needed the paper for her school project. "It's just scribbles," she said, her eyes daring me to fight back. Mom, Donna Evans, walked in and barely glanced at the mess. "Tracy's got a big presentation coming up," she said, patting Tracy's shoulder. "You can start over, Kimberly, it's not a big deal." Dad, Gary Evans, nodded from his chair, flipping through the newspaper. "Yeah, help your sister out. Family first." They never asked why Tracy did it or made her apologize. Instead, they praised her creativity for recycling my work into her assignment, which won her a ribbon at school. That pattern repeated for years, my writing contests overshadowed by Tracy's drama club wins. My published poems dismissed because Tracy needed support after a bad grade. It wasn't accidents, it was deliberate. Tracy always finding ways to dim my light so hers could shine brighter. Years later, that same jealousy boiled over in our adult lives. After Tracy's call, I couldn't shake it. I paced my apartment, the city lights flickering outside like distant warnings. The phone rang again. "Mom," I answered, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "Kimberly, Tracy told us about the wedding," she said. Her tone clipped. "It's her day. You know how sensitive she is about attention." I gripped the phone tighter. Sensitive, she's the one who smirked and said it's better without me. Mom sighed, like I was the problem. "You're always making it about you. Tracy's worked hard for this. Just stay away and let her enjoy it. Before I could respond, Dad's voice cut in. They were on speaker. Listen to your mother. We've supported Tracy through everything. Don't ruin this for her. Supported her. They'd funneled money into her marketing career while telling me writing was a hobby. I ended the call, my hands shaking. But the real blow came next. Another ring, Rhonda Parker. Tracy's best friend since high school. I'd never liked her. She always amplified Tracy's digs. "Hey, Kim," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Tracy mentioned the invite thing. Honestly, it's for the best. Your stories always steal the show at gatherings. Let her have this one." Her laugh grated like nails on a chalkboard. I hung up without a word, the pieces clicking into place. They weren't just excluding me, they were erasing me to protect Tracy's ego. Sitting on my couch, I stared at my laptop, the blank document waiting. Patrick Hayes, my boyfriend, walked in from work, dropping his keys on the table. He saw my face and sat beside me. "What happened?" I told him everything. The smirk, the calls, the coordinated attack. He listened, his jaw tightening. "They've done this your whole life. Time to flip the script." That's when it hit me. I wouldn't beg or fade away. I'd write the story, the real one, about growing up in that toxic shadow, the favoritism, the jealousy that poisoned everything, not for revenge, but to reclaim my voice. Patrick nodded, pulling up a chair. "Let's make it count. I'll help edit." We started outlining right there, turning my pain into something powerful. This wasn't just words. It was my way out. We dove into the outline, Patrick jotting notes on his phone while I typed furiously. The story needed structure, opening with that kitchen confrontation, then layering in the childhood betrayals, building to the wedding exclusion. "Make it relatable," he suggested, leaning over my shoulder. "Not just your pain, but the universal sting of family favoritism." I nodded, adding sections on how Tracy's jealousy manifested in subtle ways, like claiming credit for my early blog ideas during family dinners. By midnight, we had a draft ready for feedback. I reached out to my writer circle in Atlanta, 3 freelancers I'd met at local meetups, folks who'd built their careers from scratch without family safety nets. "Read this and tell me if it lands," I emailed, attaching the file. Their replies came fast. One said it captured the quiet rage perfectly. Another suggested tightening the emotional arcs to hit harder. We refined it over coffee the next afternoon at a midtown cafe, their input sharpening the edges without diluting the truth. Word spread quicker than I expected. A couple days in, my inbox pinged with an alert, Tracy's name tagged in a group chat screenshot from our extended family thread. Someone had leaked the draft outline I'd shared with a mutual contact. "Kimberly's writing some hit piece on Tracy," the message read, twisted into something venomous. I scrolled through the replies, aunts and cousins piling on with question marks and shocked emojis. Tracy hadn't wasted time. She'd spun it into a victim narrative. Then Rhonda jumped in. Her comment loaded, "Always knew Kim was bitter about Tracy's success. This is low, even for her." Bitter. I'd cheered Tracy's promotions while she ignored my bylines. Patrick saw the notification and pulled up my laptop. "Don't engage. Publish on your terms." But the pressure mounted when Mom called that evening. "What is this nonsense about a story?" she demanded, her voice echoing off my apartment walls. "Tracy's beside herself. You're stressing her out right before the wedding. Delete it now." I held the phone away, breathing deep. It's my truth. "Mom, she excluded me. Why can't I speak?" Dad chimed in from the background. "This isn't helping anyone. Think of the family image. Tracy's clients are high profile. One wrong word and it all crumbles." Family image. They'd always prioritized that over honesty. sweeping my hurts under the rug to keep appearances spotless. Rhonda didn't stop at comments. She started DMing my writer friends, probing for details under the guise of concern. "Just checking if Kim's okay." One messaged me, forwarding the exchange. "Rhonda asked about your rant and if you're spiraling." Spiraling, I was clearer than ever. Patrick traced the pattern: Rhonda's account liking posts that shaded me. Her stories subtly shading the outline as fiction gone wrong. Nui? It felt like a coordinated watch, her feeding intel back to Tracy to preempt any release. I blocked the noise, focusing on the final polish. We added a call to action at the end, encouraging readers to share their own sibling rivalry tales, turning it from confession to conversation. By week's end, the piece was locked, scheduled for a quiet launch on my blog, but Tracy's circle kept circling. Rhonda's latest move: a veiled threat in a voice note to a shared contact. "If this drops, it'll ruin everything for Tracy." Ruin it was already, unraveling the facade they'd built around her. We hit send on the schedule, the post set to go live just hours before her rehearsal dinner. Patrick's hand on my back grounded me as we closed the laptop. This was bigger than one story. It was the start of owning my narrative. No matter the backlash brewing, Rhonda's tracking escalated fast, her posts turning into a full assault on my feeds. Texts poured in from cousins and aunts I'd known forever, each one laced with the same scripted guilt. Andrew, my cousin from the north side, messaged first. "Heard about your little writing project. Family's worried it'll overshadow Tracy's day. Maybe hold off." Then Sarah, Dad's sister, emailed a long note. "Kimberly, we're all rooting for Tracy. Don't make this about you. Talk to her first." They weren't calling, they were coordinating. Their words echoing Mom and Dad's line like a bad echo chamber. I scrolled through the barrage, my screen lighting up with notifications from Atlanta group chats we'd shared since high school, uncles chiming in with "think of the family," neighbors forwarding Rhonda's vague hints about my drama queen phase. It felt like a siege. Every ping a reminder that Tracy's circle had weaponized our past against me. I blocked a few, but the damage spread. Mutual friends going silent, likes dropping on my old posts. I pushed through the noise, focusing on the draft. Patrick suggested going anonymous at first, layering in pseudonyms for the heavy parts to shield us from immediate backlash. "Publish under a pen name," he said, leaning over my shoulder as we tweaked the outline on the kitchen table. "Let the words hit without the target on your back." We mapped it out: sections on the torn notebooks, the rigged contests, the way Mom and Dad's praise always tilted Tracy's way. No names at launch, just raw truth wrapped in enough distance to breathe. I nodded, adding a line about chosen bonds over blood ties, drawing from our life together. Patrick squeezed my arm. "This could change things for you. Not just catharsis, real exposure." We talked future too, over takeout that night. "Once it's out," he said, "we build from there." My editing contacts in the city could line up gigs. No more scraping by on freelance scraps. I pictured us in a bigger place downtown. My name on a book cover, free from the pull of suburb expectations. It wasn't escape, it was elevation. The kind they'd never understood. The real pressure peaked that evening with Dad's call. I let it ring twice before picking up, steeling myself. "Kimberly," he started, his voice gravelly from years at the warehouse. "This story nonsense has to stop. Tracy's a wreck, stressed out, barely sleeping because of what you're stirring up." I paused, remembering her latest Instagram reel from a spa day, all smiles and champagne toasts. "Stressed, Dad. That's not the full picture." He barreled on, Mom murmuring in the background. "We're cutting you off if you post it. No more holidays, no calls. Think about what you're doing to us." Mom grabbed the phone. "You've always been the competitive one. Tracy doesn't need this reminder of old fights." Competitive, I'd spent decades shrinking to fit their narrative. It's my story too, I said, my tone even. And if stressing her out means facing truth, maybe that's the point. Dad cut back in. You're breaking the family. The line went dead. I set the phone down, the silence heavy but clarifying. Their threats weren't chains anymore. They were the push I needed. With the draft locked and anonymous, I scheduled the publish for dawn, one click away from unleashing it all. Dawn broke with a single click. The story went live under my pen name, slipping into Atlanta's online circles like a whisper that grew into a roar. By noon, shares hit the local writer groups, then spilled into family Facebook threads. I watched from my laptop, heart pounding as comments rolled in, women from suburbs like ours sharing their own sibling rifts, men nodding at the favoritism Dad's generation ignored. Patrick brewed coffee, glancing over. It's resonating, keep an eye on the metrics. We didn't celebrate yet. The real test was coming. That night, my phone lit up with Tracy's name. I answered, expecting another round of demands. Her voice came through shaky, not the confident tone from her wedding updates. Kimberly, I read it. A beat of silence stretched, broken only by her uneven breathing. Everything you wrote, it's true. Isn't it? The way Mom and Dad always picked me, even when I didn't deserve it. I leaned against the counter, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Yeah, Tracy, it is. She let out a breath, almost a laugh but edged with something raw. I was jealous, always have been. Your words. The way people listen when you speak, it's what I wanted but could never grab. Jealousy. Out in the open. But no apology followed. No, I'm sorry for the smirk. Or, let's fix this. Just the admission hanging there, heavy as the humid Atlanta air. But this timing, she added, voice hardening. My wedding's tomorrow. You had to drop this now. I didn't flinch. Your timing started it. Excluding me was your choice. She paused again, then whispered, I guess I earned that. The call ended without goodbyes, leaving me staring at the screen. Her words confirmed what I'd known: envy had driven her. But change, that was on her. Not me. The next morning, as Tracy's Miami ceremony kicked off, the story crossed state lines. Atlanta influencers picked it up, threading it into threads about toxic dynamics in Southern families. By afternoon, national sites linked back. Quotes pulling from my lines on chosen versus blood ties. Patrick refreshed the dashboard. Over 10,000 views already. Your inbox is blowing up. Offers trickled in, podcasts wanting my take. A therapist blog inviting a guest post. I replied to a few, the rush mixing with a quiet vindication. This wasn't sabotage. It was spotlight on truth they'd buried. At the reception hall in Miami, Tracy slipped away from the toasts, her gown brushing marble floors as she checked her phone. The screen glowed with alerts, not bridal congrats, but floods of shares tagging her indirectly through family connections. Guests murmured, pulling out devices, whispers turning to questions. Is this about your sister? One aunt asked, eyes wide. A cousin scrolled aloud, reading snippets that hit too close. Tracy's face paled, the celebration fracturing around her. Bridesmaids exchanged glances, the DJ's playlist fading under the hum of speculation. She forced a smile for photos, but the damage seeped in, old friends texting doubts. Vendors pausing mid-convo to glance at feeds. The $800,000 dream, meant to eclipse everything, now shared space with my words. Unavoidable and unignorable. The murmurs at Tracy's reception turned into a storm overnight. By evening, the story crested national waves. Picked up by lifestyle sites quoting my lines on sibling envy as a Southern staple. Atlanta's creative scene exploded, local podcasts embedding audio versions, book clubs in Midtown debating it over wine. Patrick monitored the surge from our balcony. "You're at 50,000 reads, agents are emailing." I sifted through the inbox, one from a New York editor standing out. "Your voice cuts deep. Let's talk book deal." We scheduled a call, her questions probing the raw edges I'd exposed. "This could be a memoir," she said. "With your platform, we're looking at advances in the mid-five figures." The number landed solid. A lifeline beyond freelance gigs. I signed with her firm by week's end, outlining expansions on family fractures and rebuilding solo. Tours in the Southeast followed. Readings at indie bookstores where crowds shared their echoes of my pain. From those talks emerged the Fund Truth Overties, aimed at writers sidelined by family doubt. We launched it quietly, seeding grants for Atlanta voices like mine, covering workshop fees and editing help. First recipients messaged thanks a poet from Decatur who'd hidden drafts from critical parents, now submitting to journals. "Your story gave me guts," one wrote. Patrick handled logistics, his contacts securing sponsors from local presses. It grew organic. Donations trickling from readers who'd nodded along to my words. No fanfare. Just quiet impact workshops in community centers. Sessions on owning your narrative without apology. Tracy's fallout hit harder. Back from Miami, she faced her agency's HR the following Monday. Clients pulled campaigns, citing the personal drama splashed across feeds. "We can't associate with this negativity." One emailed her boss, linking straight to my piece. Her role in digital marketing, built on polished images, crumbled under the authenticity I'd unleashed. Fired by Friday. She texted Rhonda in a panic, "Help me spin this." But Rhonda, who'd amplified the early smears, went radio silent at first. Then came her call to me, voice cracking over the line. "Kimberly, I saw what happened to Tracy. I pushed those posts, thought I was backing her up. Now everyone's looking at me sideways at work." She'd lost freelance collabs, brands ghosting her social strategy pitches. I listened, the old urge to fix flickering, but it died quick. "You chose sides," I said. "Live with it." She begged for a retraction, something to quiet the backlash. But I ended it there, no bridges, no mercy. The cut felt clean, her regret too late to mend what she'd helped break. Rhonda's plea echoed one last time before I silenced it. I pulled up my contacts, thumb hovering over Mom, Dad, Tracy, each name a thread I'd tugged too long. One swipe blocked them all. No dramatic send-off, just quiet finality. No more voicemails twisting blame, no texts dredging up old wounds. The apartment felt larger that instant, the midtown skyline outside sharpening into focus. Patrick noticed the shift during dinner. "You good?" I nodded, fork pausing midair. "Better than good. It's done." We raised glasses to that simple red wine from the corner store, toasting the space we'd carved without their weight. Months slipped by in a rhythm I'd chosen. My book deal solidified into deadlines met over coffee shops in Buckhead. Chapters fleshing out the fractures I'd only sketched before. Readings drew crowds from Atlanta's literary underbelly, folks nodding as I read passages on envy disguised as love. Patrick and I upgraded to a loft overlooking Piedmont Park, his editing side hustle blending seamless with my tours. Mornings meant joint outlines, evenings walks where we planned expansions, maybe a podcast series on reclaiming narratives. No suburb pullbacks, no guilt-laced invites to holidays that never felt mine. Freedom tasted like that first unchecked morning, sunlight unrestricted. Tracy's unraveling unfolded in fragments from mutuals who hadn't cut ties. The scandal lingered, her ex-fiancé bailing weeks after the wedding, stress from the online firestorm too much for their fresh start. "She changed after Miami," he told a shared acquaintance. packing boxes amid arguments over her image problem. Job hunt stalled. Atlanta's marketing scene, tight-knit and reputation-driven, whispered her name with caution. Freelance leads dried up, agencies citing recent controversies in rejection emails. Mom and Dad retreated to their rancher. Neighbors in the subdivision pulling back from barbecues. Whispers at church potlucks turned to sidelong glances, their once solid standing eroded by the truth I'd aired. Dad's warehouse buddies joked about that family blog drama. Mom's book club dissolving under awkward silences. Isolation crept in. The kind suburbs amplify no escape without facing the stairs. I heard it secondhand. Piecing together without direct lines. No calls for reconciliation. No olive branches from a sister who'd smirked her way to exclusion. The cut stayed absolute. A boundary I'd finally enforced. Their choices rippled out. Real as any American fallout lost connections, strained marriages, reputations chipped in quiet communities where word travels on cul-de-sacs. Looking back. That viral spark wasn't payback. It was ignition. Speaking truth didn't just expose their jealousy, it freed me from performing smallness. The lesson sinks in now when family envy chains you. Breaking free demands owning your voice, no apologies. It teaches spotting the toxic early, the smirks, the tilts, the erasures, and walking away before they define you. For anyone watching, carrying that hidden hurt, cut the cord. Build your circle from those who amplify, not diminish. Your story deserves the light, unfiltered and full, in the end. That's the real legacy, not their regret, but the life you claim without permission.
We're in Honolulu. Why didn't you come to the airport yesterday, sweetie? My mother's sugary voice through the phone made my stomach turn. I stood frozen in the middle of Dallas International Airport, my packed suitcase beside me as the truth slowly sank in. They had deliberately lied about our flight date. My name is Jocelyn Adams, and I never thought my own parents would stoop this low. I'd been looking forward to this family vacation for months, desperately needing a break after an exhausting quarter at work. As a marketing executive, I'd just finished hosting important clients from overseas, and this trip was supposed to be my reward, a chance to relax and reconnect with my family. "What do you mean yesterday?" I managed to say, my voice shaking. "You told me the flight was today at 2 p.m. I have the text messages to prove it." The bustling airport suddenly felt suffocating as other travelers rushed past me, their excitement for their own journeys only highlighting my growing devastation. "Oh, sweetie, there must have been some confusion," my mother replied, but I could hear the lie in her voice. "Your sister made it just fine. We're all settled in at the resort now." Of course my sister made it. Amy was always their priority, their golden child. I should have known something was off when they insisted on handling all the flight arrangements themselves, claiming it would be easier that way. The same parents who relied on me to help pay their bills somehow couldn't trust me to book my own ticket. "This wasn't a confusion, Mom," I said, my voice growing stronger as anger replaced shock. "You deliberately gave me the wrong date. You never wanted me on this trip, did you?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "Now, Jocelyn, don't be dramatic. These things happen." I ended the call, my hand trembling. Around me, families embraced as they prepared for their own vacations, while I stood alone, betrayed by the people who should have loved me most. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been sending them money every month for the past 2 years, helping them maintain their lifestyle after my dad's early retirement. They relied on my financial support for everything from medical bills to groceries, and still, they chose to exclude me from our family vacation. Looking at my useless suitcase, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. But more than sadness, I felt a burning anger rising inside me. This wasn't just about a missed vacation. It was about years of manipulation and favoritism. And standing there in the airport, I made a decision that would change everything. I've always wondered if my parents ever truly saw me as their daughter, or just as their personal bank account. Growing up, everything was about Amy. Her dance recitals, her straight A's, her perfect smile. I learned to live in her shadow, but I never stopped trying to earn my parents' love and approval. After graduating college, I threw myself into my marketing career, working overtime and weekends to climb the corporate ladder. While Amy pursued her dreams of becoming an actress, funded by our parents' retirement savings, I was building something real. Within 5 years, I had earned my position as the youngest executive at my firm, managing major client accounts and a team of 15 people. That's when my dad decided to retire early due to his arthritis. Their savings had dwindled from supporting Amy's failed acting career, and suddenly they were struggling to make ends meet. Without hesitation, I stepped in to help. Every month, I sent them $2,000 to cover their mortgage and utilities. When unexpected medical bills came up, I covered those too. Last year alone, I gave them over $30,000, money I had planned to use for a down payment on my own house. "We're so blessed to have such a generous daughter," my mom would say during our weekly calls. But those calls always ended the same way, with updates about Amy's latest audition or her new headshots. They never asked about my work or my life unless they needed something. 2 months ago, when they mentioned planning a family trip to Hawaii, I was thrilled. Finally, a chance to spend quality time together. They insisted on handling all the arrangements since Dad had airline miles to use. "Don't worry about anything," they said. "Just focus on your big client meeting. We'll take care of everything." Like a fool, I believed them. I even transferred extra money to their account to help cover the resort expenses. "It's the least I can do," I told them, imagining lazy days on the beach and family dinners watching the sunset. I thought maybe this trip would be different, that they would finally see me as more than just their financial safety net. Instead, here I was, standing in an empty airport with a packed suitcase and a broken heart. My phone buzzed with a new message, a photo from Amy of her and our parents at the beach, cocktails in hand. The caption read, "Family vacation begins. Missing you, sis. Wish you could have made it." The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Standing there in the airport, staring at Amy's photo, something inside me finally snapped. I started scrolling through past text messages from my parents, and the pattern became crystal clear. Every conversation about the trip had been carefully orchestrated to ensure I'd miss it. "The flight's at 2 p.m. on the 15th, my mom had texted. But looking at Amy's Instagram story, I could see their boarding passes from yesterday, the 14th, clear as day. They hadn't made a mistake. They'd planned this deception down to the last detail. My phone rang again. This time it was my father. "Jocelyn," he started, his voice stern like I was a child being scolded. "Your mother is very upset by your attitude. We made an honest mistake with the dates, and you're turning this into a drama. You're a grown woman. You should understand these things happen." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. An honest mistake? Then why did Amy know the correct date? Why did you insist on booking everything yourselves? Why have you been lying to me for weeks? "Now, listen here," he began, but I cut him off. "No, Dad, you listen. I just checked my bank statements. Last week, I sent you $3,000 for this trip. Was that a mistake too, or did you just take my money knowing you'd leave me behind?" The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. "Jocelyn," he finally said, his voice softer now, trying a different approach. "You know we're on a fixed income. We needed that money for the trip. You're doing so well in your career. You understand about making sacrifices for family, don't you?" My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. "Sacrifices for family? I've been making sacrifices for years. I've given up my savings, my dreams of buying a house, everything to support you and Mom. And this is how you repay me?" "Don't be selfish," he snapped. "Your sister needed this vacation. She's been under so much stress with her acting career and—" "Her acting career?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You mean the hobby you've been funding with my money while she lives rent-free in your house? The auditions that never lead anywhere while I work 60-hour weeks to support all of you? That's enough, he shouted. I won't stand for this disrespect. You've changed, Jocelyn. Money has made you cruel. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it was hardening into resolve. You're right about one thing, Dad. I have changed, and things are about to change even more. I ended the call and opened my banking app. It was time to close the Bank of Jocelyn, permanently. The drive home from the airport was a blur of anger and determination. I spent the evening documenting everything: screenshots of text messages, bank transfers, a detailed spreadsheet of every penny I'd given them over the past 2 years. The total made me feel sick. $47,850. That's what my parents' love had cost me. The next morning, I walked into my bank and closed the joint account I'd opened to transfer money to them. Then I called my company's HR department to remove my parents as beneficiaries from my life insurance policy. With each step, I felt lighter, as if I was finally breaking free from invisible chains. That's when the messages started flooding in. First came the guilt trips from my mother. I can't sleep knowing you're upset with us. This is tearing our family apart. How could you be so heartless? Then Amy joined in. Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. It was just a miscommunication. Mom's crying every day because of you. But it was my father's message that really showed their true colors. We raised you better than this. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Your mother needs her medication refilled this week. Don't you dare abandon your responsibilities to this family. I stared at my phone, amazed by their audacity. My responsibilities to the family? What about their responsibility to treat me with basic respect? Instead of responding, I drafted a clear, firm email. Dear Mom, Dad, and Amy, I've done a lot of thinking since yesterday. The Hawaii incident wasn't a miscommunication. It was a deliberate choice to exclude me while still taking my money. This pattern of behavior ends now. Effective immediately, I am cutting off all financial support. The money I've provided was a choice, not an obligation. You'll need to find another way to cover your expenses. Do not contact me about money again. I need time and space to reevaluate our relationship. Thanks. Within minutes, my phone exploded with calls and texts. My mother left sobbing voicemails about how they'd lose the house. Amy sent angry messages calling me selfish and heartless. My father's texts grew increasingly threatening, warning me about consequences if I didn't come to my senses. I blocked them all. That evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, doubt tried to creep in. Years of conditioning had taught me to put their needs first, to believe I was selfish for having boundaries. But then I remembered standing in that airport, realizing they had planned and executed their betrayal while spending my money. The next day at work, I received an unexpected visit. My Aunt Rose, my father's sister, walked into my office. I heard what happened, she said, sitting down across from me. Your parents asked me to talk sense into you. I braced myself for more guilt trips, but Rose surprised me. What they did was cruel, Jocelyn. I've watched them take advantage of your kindness for years. It's time someone told you the truth. You deserve better than this. Tears welled up in my eyes as she reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Finally, someone in my family saw me. Really saw me. They'll try everything to pull you back in, Rose warned. Stay strong. You're doing the right thing. 2 weeks after sending that email, I discovered something that made the Hawaii incident look trivial. Rose called me during my lunch break, her voice tight with concern. Jocelyn, I need to show you something. Can you come to my house after work? When I arrived, she had a stack of papers spread across her dining room table. Your father came to me last week, asking for a loan. He let slip some things that didn't add up, so I did some digging. What she showed me made my blood run cold. Bank statements, loan applications, and credit card bills painted a disturbing picture. My parents hadn't just been using my money for basic expenses. They'd been living far beyond their means, counting on my support to cover their extravagant lifestyle. Look at this, Rose pointed to a credit card statement. They took out a new card in your name 3 months ago. Have you checked your credit report recently? My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and downloaded my credit report. There it was, a $15,000 credit card I never knew existed. They had used my social security number and personal information to open it. That's identity theft, Rose said quietly. It's a crime, Jocelyn. I felt like I couldn't breathe. How could they do this? There's more, Rose continued. Remember that story about Amy's acting career? She's not even in California for auditions. She's been living at home this whole time, working part-time at a local coffee shop. The money they claimed was for her headshots and acting classes. They've been using it for gambling. The room spun as pieces fell into place. The constant requests for more money, the vague explanations, the guilt trips when I asked questions. It wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was fraud. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Please, sweetie, we need to talk. Your father's having chest pains from all this stress. If anything happens to him, it'll be your fault. I showed Rose the message. She shook her head. More manipulation. They're desperate because their house of cards is falling apart without your money. What should I do? You have 2 choices, Rose said. You can press charges for the identity theft, or you can handle this privately. But either way, you need to protect yourself. I thought about years of sacrifice, of putting their needs before mine, of believing their lies. The chest pains, the tears, the guilt trips. It was all part of their game. I want to talk to them one last time, I said, face to face. But I need you there with me. Rose nodded. I'll set it up. But first we need to gather evidence and freeze your credit. They've shown you who they really are, Jocelyn. Believe them. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the dreams I'd put on hold to support them. The house I wanted to buy, the vacations I never took, the savings I should have had. They hadn't just stolen my money. They'd stolen years of my life. But as I lay there, something else occurred to me. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly clear-headed. The fog of manipulation was lifting, and in its place was a steel-like resolve. They wanted to play games? Fine. But this time, I would be the one making the rules. The confrontation was set for Saturday afternoon at Rose's house. I spent the morning with a lawyer, understanding my options regarding the identity theft. Then I prepared a folder with all the evidence, the credit card statements, bank transfers, text messages, everything. I needed them to understand that their game was over. When my parents arrived, Amy was with them. She looked nothing like the carefree girl in those Hawaii photos. Her face was drawn, guilty. They filed into Rose's living room like children called to the principal's office. Thank you for coming, I began, my voice steady. I've discovered some things we need to discuss. Jocelyn, my mother interrupted, tears already starting. Before you say anything, you need to know. No, I cut her off. I'm talking now. I pulled out the credit card statements. Would anyone like to explain this? The color drained from my father's face. Amy looked confused, but my mother jumped in quickly. It was an emergency. We were going to tell you. An emergency? I laid out more papers. Like the gambling debts? Or the maxed out credit cards? Or maybe Amy's fake acting career? Amy's head snapped up. What do you mean fake? I turned to her. You really don't know? They've been telling me you're in California pursuing acting. That's where all my money supposedly went. Your headshots, classes, rent. What? Amy looked at our parents in shock. I've been working at Starbucks. They told me you refused to help with my college tuition. The room erupted in chaos. Amy started crying. My mother tried to explain, and my father stood up, his face red with anger. Enough, he shouted. We did what we had to do. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, pulling out my final piece of evidence. You committed identity theft. That's a federal crime. I have two choices here. Press charges or handle this privately. Your decision. My mother collapsed into theatrical sobs. You wouldn't. We're your parents. Parents don't steal from their children, Rose interjected. Parents don't lie and manipulate and commit fraud. Just then, my father clutched his chest and staggered. My heart, he gasped. Call an ambulance. For a moment, I almost fell for it. But then I saw my mother's face. Not panic, but calculation. This was their final play, their attempt to regain control. No, I said firmly. No more manipulation. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a repayment agreement for every penny you stole. You're going to close that fraudulent credit card. And you're going to leave me alone. And if we refuse? My father asked, his heart attack mysteriously forgotten. Then I'll press charges and you can explain your actions to a judge. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, my father nodded, defeated. My mother stared at the floor, her tears suddenly dry. And Amy? Amy looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. As they signed the repayment agreement my lawyer had prepared, I felt no satisfaction, only a deep, hollow sadness for the family I thought I had. In the weeks that followed, my parents' carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Without my financial support, they were forced to sell their house and move into a small apartment. The repayment agreement meant most of their retirement income went to paying back what they'd stolen from me. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Amy moved in with Rose temporarily while she figured out her next steps. She called me one evening, her voice small and uncertain. I had no idea what they were doing, she said. All these years they've been playing us against each other. I'm so sorry, Jocelyn. Her apology meant something, but it couldn't erase years of damage. Still, it was a start. My parents made one final attempt to manipulate me. They showed up at my office unannounced, causing a scene in the lobby. We'll lose everything, my mother wailed. After all we've sacrificed for you. I stood my ground, surrounded by concerned colleagues. You lost me, I said calmly. That's the only thing that matters, and it was your choice. Security escorted them out, and as I watched them leave, I felt nothing but peace. The guilt that had weighed me down for years was gone. I was no longer their ATM, their emotional punching bag, or their victim. That evening, I booked a trip to Hawaii, just for me. As I confirmed the reservation, I smiled at the irony. They had tried to exclude me from a family vacation, but in doing so, they had given me something priceless. Freedom. 3 months later, I stood on a beach in Maui, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. This wasn't the family vacation I'd originally imagined, but it was exactly what I needed. My phone, peaceful without the constant barrage of guilt-tripping messages, buzzed with a text from Rose. They're finally moving out of the house this weekend, she wrote. Amy's enrolled in community college. She's asking about having coffee with you when you're back. I took a deep breath of salt air and replied, Tell her I'm open to it. The repayment plan was working, slowly but surely. My parents had sold most of their possessions, and every month, a check arrived from them without fail. Not because they were sorry, but because they had no choice. The fraud charges I'd held back would surface if they missed a single payment. My mother still tried sending emotional emails through different accounts. We're eating ramen noodles while you're living in luxury. Is this what you wanted? I deleted them without responding. Their guilt trips had lost their power over me. At work, I'd earned another promotion. The energy I used to spend managing my parents' chaos now went into building my own life. I'd even started looking at houses, a dream I'd put on hold for years while funding their lifestyle. Standing there on the beach, I finally understood. Sometimes the happiest endings don't involve forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes they're about walking away and choosing yourself. My parents had planned this Hawaii trip to hurt me, but instead they'd set me free. What do you mean my account is overdrawn? That's impossible, I said, staring at my phone in mock surprise as Brandon's sister ranted about the rent money he'd promised her. He did what? When? I kept my voice steady, letting her believe I was just learning about my husband's betrayal. My name is Isla Thompson, and my husband Brandon just became one of the biggest mistakes of my life. But not in the way he thinks. That Sunday morning when I woke up to an empty bed and a cruel note on the fridge felt like a slap in the face, even though I'd been expecting it. Goodbye. Never loved you anyway. Real classy, Brandon. I'm a forensic accountant in Milwaukee, and I've spent the last 15 years tracking financial fraud for some of the biggest corporations in the Midwest. So when my own husband started showing signs of planning his great escape 3 months ago, let's just say he wasn't exactly dealing with an amateur. The first red flag was when he started asking about our retirement accounts, showing sudden interest in our finances after years of letting me handle everything. Then came the secret phone calls, the unexplained absences, and the way he'd change his computer screen whenever I walked into the room. Classic signs of someone planning to bolt. I'd seen it all before in my line of work. What Brandon never realized was that every suspicious transaction, every hidden purchase, every attempt to quietly move our money, I saw it all. Each step he took to try to rob me blind was documented, photographed, and sent straight to my lawyer. By the time he left that note, thinking he'd pulled off the perfect escape, I had already moved our savings, flagged our accounts, and prepared for every scenario he might try. So when the fraud alerts started flooding my phone that Monday morning, I couldn't help but smile. Brandon thought he was 10 steps ahead, but he had no idea he was walking straight into a trap of his own making. The phone kept buzzing with notifications, declined transactions, failed withdrawal attempts, frozen accounts. Each one was like music to my ears. My hand brushed against the folder marked "Just in case" sitting on my desk, filled with months of evidence that would destroy not just his escape plan, but his entire future. As I listened to his sister's desperate voice on the phone, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You might think I was devastated, finding out my husband of 8 years never really loved me. But here's the thing about being a forensic accountant. You learn to see patterns. People think they're clever when they're hiding things, but money leaves a trail. Always. And Brandon? He left breadcrumbs everywhere. I met Brandon at a charity gala 6 years ago. He was charming, successful, or so he claimed, and seemed to have his life together. He worked as an investment advisor, drove a nice car, and talked about building a future together. I was impressed by his confidence, his ambition. Looking back now, I should have noticed how he always deflected questions about his clients, how vague he was about his past. The first 3 years were good, or at least I thought they were. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs of Milwaukee, planned exotic vacations, and talked about starting a family. But there were always these little things that didn't quite add up, like how he'd get defensive whenever I asked about his student loans, or how he'd change the subject when I mentioned meeting his old colleagues. "You don't trust me?" he'd say, turning it around on me. "Why do you need to know everything? Don't you think I can handle my own finances?" Classic manipulation. I'd seen it countless times in my work, people using emotional leverage to avoid financial transparency. But I let it slide because I wanted to believe in us, in him. That was my first mistake. Then came the signs I couldn't ignore. Last Christmas, he insisted on separate accounts for our holiday spending. "It'll be more romantic if we surprise each other," he said. But I noticed the credit card statements he thought he'd hidden, showing purchases at high-end jewelry stores, jewelry I never received. The weekend business trips that didn't match any conferences I could find. The mysterious calls from numbers that always went straight to voicemail when I was around. Most wives might have confronted their husbands immediately, but I'm not most wives. Instead, I started pulling bank statements, tracking transactions, and building a case. Every time he thought he was covering his tracks, he was actually giving me more evidence. I watched as he slowly tried to drain our accounts, thinking I was oblivious to it all. "You're working late again?" he'd ask. feigning concern while I sat at my computer. Just catching up on some cases, I'd reply, not mentioning that the case I was working on was his. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. I was working late, actually late this time, when my colleague Susan rushed to my desk. Her face was pale, and she was clutching her phone like it might bite her. "Isla, you need to see this," she said, her voice shaking. "I was reviewing the Thompson case files when I found something. It's about Brandon." My stomach dropped as I looked at her screen. There it was, Brandon's name, linked to a series of suspicious transactions we were investigating. Not as a witness or a victim, but as a person of interest. The same patterns I'd been tracking in our personal accounts were showing up in his professional dealings. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was running from something much bigger. "There's more," Susan whispered, scrolling through the documents. "He's been named in 3 other fraud investigations. Different states, different names, but the same MO. He finds successful women, marries them, then disappears with their money. The last one was in Phoenix, just before he moved to Milwaukee." The pieces started falling into place. The charm, the secrecy, the sudden interest in our finances, it was all part of his pattern. I wasn't his wife, I was his next target. And he had no idea that his latest mark was someone who specialized in catching people exactly like him. That night, I sat in our kitchen until dawn, going through everything with fresh eyes. The loving husband act, the careful manipulation, the way he'd slowly tried to isolate me from my friends and family. It was all so clear now. I found myself laughing, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer irony. He'd picked the wrong woman to con. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing. Every morning, I'd kiss him goodbye like nothing was wrong. Every night, I'd listen to his lies about work while documenting every suspicious transaction. I moved our savings, contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and gathered evidence that would not only protect me, but help his previous victims. "You seem different lately," he said one night, studying my face. "Is everything okay?" I smiled, thinking about the trap I'd set, about how his own arrogance would be his downfall. "Just tired from work," I replied. "You know how it gets this time of year." He nodded sympathetically, probably thinking I was working hard to earn more money for him to steal. If he'd paid more attention, he might have noticed the gleam in my eye, the one that said I knew exactly what he was planning. But con men like Brandon never think they'll be the ones getting conned. And that's the thing about people who make a living betraying others. They never expect to be the ones getting played. The morning after Brandon disappeared, his plan started unfolding exactly as he'd expected. The first call came from our bank. Unusual activity, multiple withdrawal attempts, credit cards maxed out. The second was from his sister Kelly, hysterical about the money he'd borrowed. The third was from a woman named Rachel Clark in Phoenix, asking if I knew where her husband was. Her husband. The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I gripped my phone tighter, sitting down at my kitchen table. "Brandon Murphy. He's still legally my husband," Rachel explained, her voice tight with anger. "He disappeared with my savings 3 years ago. I've been tracking him ever since." I smiled despite myself. "Actually, here he went by Brandon Thompson, and you're not going to believe this, but I've been expecting your call." Over the next hour, Rachel and I compared notes. Same charming smile, same investment advisor story, same pattern of slowly draining accounts before disappearing. But this time, there was one crucial difference. Me. "I've gathered enough evidence to bring him down," I told her, "but I need your help to catch him." That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. "I'm sorry, can we talk? Just one last time?" Perfect. He was following the pattern I discovered in Rachel's case, reaching out after the initial disappearance, trying to manipulate his way into one last chance to access any remaining funds. I showed the text to my lawyer, who was already preparing our counterattack. "Let's set the trap," she said, her eyes gleaming. I agreed to meet Brandon at a coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, he was already there, looking appropriately remorseful. His eyes were red, his clothes slightly rumpled, the perfect picture of a man who'd made a terrible mistake. "Isla, I'm so sorry," he began, reaching for my hand across the table. "I've been going through some things, dealing with some bad investments. I panicked." I pulled my hand away, playing my part perfectly. "How much trouble are you in, Brandon?" His eyes lit up. Just a flicker, but I caught it. He thought I was falling for it. "About $200,000. But I have a plan to fix everything. I just need access to our emergency fund." I pretended to consider it, watching him squirm. "The emergency fund, right. The one you tried to empty yesterday?" His face fell for just a second before he recovered. "That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. But if you help me now, I promise—" "To what? To disappear again? Or to stick around long enough to drain my accounts like you did to Rachel in Phoenix?" The color drained from his face. For the first time since I'd known him, Brandon Thompson, or Murphy, or whatever his real name was, looked genuinely shocked. "You know, the funny thing is," I continued, sliding a folder across the table, "if you'd done your research, you might have realized that stealing from a forensic accountant wasn't your smartest move." Just then, 2 FBI agents approached our table. I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Oh, and Brandon? You might want to call a lawyer. A good one." As Brandon was being led away by the FBI agents, my phone lit up with a call from Susan. Her timing couldn't have been better. "We've got him," she said, her voice triumphant. "The team just finished analyzing those offshore accounts you flagged. Brandon isn't just running a marriage con. He's been operating a massive Ponzi scheme. We're looking at fraud in the millions." I watched through the coffee shop window as Brandon was placed in a federal vehicle. He looked small now, nothing like the confident man who thought he'd outsmarted me. "How many victims?" I asked, already knowing the answer would be ugly. 23 so far, spanning 5 states. 12 marriages, all to successful women in finance. But here's the kicker. He was planning something bigger. We found evidence of a new investment firm he was setting up. He was going to use your credentials and reputation to lure in high-net-worth clients. I thought about all those late nights when he'd ask about my cases, showing sudden interest in my work. He wasn't being supportive. He was gathering information, planning to exploit my professional reputation for his biggest scam yet. "The irony," I said, "is that if he hadn't gotten greedy, if he'd just stuck to his usual marriage scam, he might have gotten away again, but he just had to go bigger." "That's not even the best part," Susan continued. "Remember that country club membership he insisted on last year? Turns out he was using it to meet his next target, Caroline Mitchell, the hedge fund manager. He was already laying the groundwork for his next disappearing act." I recalled all the Sunday golf games, the late-night networking events. While he was playing the devoted husband at home, he was setting up his next victim. But Caroline Mitchell wasn't just any hedge fund manager. She was one of my closest friends, and she'd been working with me to document Brandon's every move for months. "Let me guess," I said. "Caroline gave you access to all their private conversations?" "Every email, every text, every recorded conversation in the club lounge. He literally handed us a blueprint of his entire operation while trying to seduce her. The guy practically wrote our case for us." I couldn't help but laugh. Brandon had spent months meticulously planning his exit, thinking he was the smartest person in the room. Meanwhile, every person he thought he was manipulating had been working together, building an airtight case against him. "Have you heard from his sister Kelly?" I asked, thinking about her frantic call this morning. "That's another interesting thread," Susan replied. "Turns out she's not his sister at all. She's an accomplice. They've been running this scam together for years. She plays the desperate sister to explain why he needs to borrow money urgently right before he disappears. She's being picked up in Chicago as we speak." I sat back in my chair, taking it all in. The scope of Brandon's deception was breathtaking, but so was his blindness. He'd been so focused on maintaining his lies that he never noticed the trap closing around him. One more thing, Susan added. We found his real identity. His name isn't Brandon Thompson or Murphy, it's Brandon Roberts, and he's been wanted for fraud in Canada since 2015. I smiled, thinking about the massive case file waiting on my desk. Well, Brandon Roberts, welcome to your worst nightmare. I was about to head back to the office when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. You think you're clever, but you have no idea what's coming. Check your email. The message was followed by an email containing detailed photos of me with my family, my daily routines, even shots through my home windows. A chill ran down my spine, not from fear, but from anger. Brandon had hired someone to watch me. I forwarded everything to Susan and my lawyer, then made a call to the FBI agent in charge of Brandon's case. Agent Morrison? We've got another player in the game. Already on it, she replied. The photos were sent from an IP address we've been monitoring. James Foster, Brandon's former cellmate from a brief stint in Phoenix. He's been working as Brandon's muscle, threatening victims who get too close to exposing the scheme. I thought about Rachel Clark, wondering if this was why she'd waited so long to come forward. Where is he now? That's the thing, we can't locate him, but he's probably... Agent Morrison stopped mid-sentence. Hold on. There's movement on one of Brandon's frozen accounts. Someone's trying to access it from inside your house. My house. Where I'd left my laptop open. I called Rachel immediately. Is everything okay there? We have a situation, she whispered. Kelly's here. She must have had a key. She's trying to access Brandon's accounts from your computer. Kelly, the fake sister, who was supposed to be in custody in Chicago. My mind raced through the possibilities. Either she'd escaped or... Rachel, get out of there now. Kelly's not working alone. I heard a crash in the background, followed by Rachel's sharp intake of breath. Too late, Foster's here too. My heart pounded, but my mind remained clear. This was exactly the kind of desperate move I'd anticipated. Rachel, remember what we discussed? It's time. Through the phone, I heard Rachel's calm voice. Hey, Kelly, before you do anything stupid, you might want to look at what's on that screen. I smiled, knowing exactly what they were seeing. Every file, every account, every piece of evidence wasn't just stored on my laptop. It was being live-streamed to the FBI's servers. Plus, the whole house was under surveillance with agents stationed nearby. It's over, I heard Rachel say. Look outside. The sound of sirens filled the background as FBI agents swarmed my house. Within minutes, both Kelly and Foster were in custody, and Rachel was safe. I drove home to find Agent Morrison waiting for me. Quite a performance, she said. You knew they'd try something like this? People like Brandon, Kelly, and Foster, they always get desperate at the end. They're so used to being in control that they can't handle losing it. I looked at my house, now a crime scene. I just had to make them think they had one last chance to win. Well, with this attempted break-in and the threats, we can add witness intimidation and conspiracy charges to their list. Agent Morrison smiled. I'd say your trap worked perfectly. I thought about Brandon sitting in his cell, probably still believing he could talk his way out of this. He had no idea that his desperate final move had just given us everything we needed to ensure he'd never scam anyone again. 2 months later, I sat in the courtroom watching Brandon's world crumble around him. Gone was the confident smile, replaced by a look of utter defeat as the judge read out his sentence. Brandon Roberts, for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and witness intimidation, this court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison. I caught his eye as they led him away. For a moment, his mask slipped completely, and I saw the panic beneath. The man who'd written "Never loved you anyway" on a note in my fridge now faced a future where love was the least of his concerns. Kelly and Foster didn't fare much better. Both took plea deals, but they'd still serve significant time. As part of their agreements, they provided evidence against Brandon's entire network, exposing operations in 3 countries. Rachel sat beside me, squeezing my hand as Brandon's victims, my unexpected sisters in survival, stood one by one to share their impact statements. Each woman told a similar story of betrayal, but ended with the same note of triumph. We'd not only gotten justice, we'd gotten our power back. After the sentencing, Agent Morrison approached me with a smile. "The Bureau could use someone with your skills. Have you ever considered consulting for us?" I thought about all the other Brandons out there, all the scammers who thought they were too clever to get caught. You know what? I think I'd like that. Yeah. As I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Milwaukee sunshine, I felt lighter than I had in years. Brandon thought he'd destroyed me, but he'd only made me stronger. And now I had a new mission, ensuring he would be the last con man to underestimate a woman with a talent for numbers and a mind for justice. 6 months after Brandon's sentencing, I stood at a podium in a packed conference room at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division in Milwaukee. Behind me was a presentation detailing what they now called the Thompson case, though that wasn't his real name or mine anymore. I'd taken back my maiden name, wanting nothing to do with any of Brandon's aliases. The modern con artist doesn't use a gun, I told the room full of agents and analysts. They use trust, manipulation, and technology. But they all leave a trail. You just have to know where to look. The program I'd developed with the FBI was already showing results. 3 major romance scam rings had been busted in the past month alone. Rachel had become one of our most valuable consultants, her experience helping us understand how these predators chose their targets. After the presentation, I checked my phone to find a message from Susan. Another victim of Brandon's had been located in Vancouver. Unlike the rest of us, she'd lost everything: her house, her savings, her business. But this time, we could help her recover what was stolen. The forensic team had finally cracked Brandon's encrypted files, revealing accounts he'd hidden all over the world. I thought about that Sunday morning when I'd found his note, how he'd tried to break me with 5 cruel words. Instead, he'd given me a gift, the chance to help others fight back against people like him. My new apartment overlooked Lake Michigan, and as I sat on my balcony that evening, I smiled at the irony. Brandon had spent his life taking things from strong women, but in the end, he'd inadvertently created something powerful. A network of survivors turned warriors, all dedicated to taking down men like him. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving.